I get it. Everyone tells you that you need to know how to niche. So don't worry, I'm not going to be adding to the noise on the internet. In this particular episode, I am going to be telling you that you need to niche, but I'm going to be showing you how to do it in a way that you haven't really thought about it before and in a way that is actually going to help you to stand out and sell because you are differentiating yourself, and that is how you stand out in a crowded marketplace. Now, this is part two in a series on how to set your personal brand based business up for a big money, big freedom, and big success. In the last episode, I talked about how you need to, or can if you want to, and it's quite freeing to do this because it unlocks the golden niche handcuffs that are tying your multi passionate little wrists together. I spoke about how you don't need to create businesses as a personal brand based business. You can instead create little projects, and every little project can have its own niche attached to it. So, in today's episode, I'm taking that one step further and I'm going to talk about this concept of niching. And yes, you've heard about it before, but how to do it in a way that actually feels like it's impactful and is making a real difference in how you have your business set up. So, this particular conversation comes up a lot. I had a conversation a little while ago with a student, and she came to me with what she thought was the best idea in the world. And I know that feeling when you're so excited about something. And trust me, I have made all of the mistakes that I'm about to share with you that she and so many of us make when we're first starting out. But she said, I've got this idea, Stevie, and I'm going to put together a business program. And I was waiting for the rest of it. I was like, oh, that's so exciting. And she's like, I've been in business for 20 years and I've been teaching this stuff online for 5 years, but I want to put it into an actual program. And it's going to be like an online business in a box. It's everything that you possibly need to know. And I blinked. I waited for the rest of it. And I did what any good coach or consultant would do, which is be honest about the idea and give some feedback that is going to help that particular student to craft it into something that is going to be viable. Now, here is what I told her. It's not enough. Now, I have been around the online business block enough times to know when an idea isn't going to get the legs that it needs to give you the momentum in the early days. Now, the mistake that this particular student, that the old me, that many of us make, is to go through this process when we decide that we're going to start a business or to create a leverage course or program or pretty much anything on the internet that you want to make money. And it goes a little something like this. You start with stage one, which is the idea. So somebody will come up with a great idea. They'll look around them and they'll see like all of the people that have been in the industry for ages doing similar things to what they want to do. And they'll see that they've gone big and broad. So, for example, inside of online business, we've all heard of Marie Forleo, for example. She has a program called B School, which teaches people business on the internet. Probably the most broad kind of concept that you could possibly think of. And they think, well, if she did it, then I can do it. And they don't want to limit themselves. And the thinking goes a little something like this. They think, okay, well, I'm just starting out. I need to cast the net as wide as I possibly can so that I can bring in as many people and give my business the best chance of success from the outset. Stage number two is when they start. And this is when you're so excited. You're full of like this real bravado and you're feeling a little bit nervous, but you get the idea out there and the message is loud and clear. Like, I can help you. And then they'll insert this broad niche here. Like, I can help you start a business, right? And it's slow. And they start to get maybe a trickle of inquiry come through. Usually it comes from referrals. So for me, for example, it came from people that I knew offline, people that I had worked with previously, my cousin's wife. And that is kind of how the business starts to get momentum, usually in a one-to-one capacity. But what then happens is that at a particular point, and usually pretty soon, they will tap out of their personal network. And so maybe they'll kind of get these slow inquiries keep coming through, but it's not like the beginning. And inquiries that are coming in from the outside are always price-based. So if they don't know the particular person, somebody will come in, there'll be this like inquiry, and then they'll ask about price. And then a lot of the time they'll send the proposal out and then they'll just get ghosted, right? And in the meantime, they'll keep slogging away and serving the clients that they already have. But because they've gone so broad with the niche, they've had all different people coming in that do all different things. And so they're reinventing the wheel every single time with the actual service or the deliverable that they're rolling out as well. So it feels hard on the delivery side and it feels hard on the marketing side. And they will be scrolling on Instagram and they'll see these people that will say, get away from a service based business model. You can create something leveraged. It is going to be the key to your freedom. And they start to take that on board and they're like, okay, well, maybe the answer to this slog that I'm finding myself in at the moment is going to be creating something leveraged, like a course or a group coaching program or something along those lines. And so this is where stage number 3 usually comes in, which is where they start to contemplate a business model shift. And so they'll think, okay, well, the way to get freedom is to create a course or a program or something along those lines. And there'll be that rush of excitement. So the same rush of excitement that you had way back in stage 1 when you had the idea, but you're like, no, this new thing, this is going to be the answer. And so they dive right into the new thing. Now, this is where stage 4 comes in. And I call stage 4, sorry about it, I call it the flop. Now, this is where they will go in with the same offer, but a leveraged version of the offer with this new business model. So let's say it's a group coaching program, and they'll start to put it out to market and they'll wonder why they're not getting bites, or at least nowhere near what it is that they need to actually make this thing viable and anything more than a hobby. Now, this is usually where the real chinks in the armor that actually the seeds were sown for way back in stage 1 really start to appear. And here is why. When you want to go into a leveraged business model, it is generally going to be the case that the price point of that particular offer is going to be less than whatever you are offering in a one-to-one capacity. And that is because it is more leveraged and usually it's less, right? So let's say that your social media management service is $5,000, right? For a particular time period, but you have this online program coming out and it is going to be $700. What that then means, it's a simple math thing, is that you need a lot more leads in order to sell a $700 thing than you do to sell a $5,000 thing. And so you need to really broaden out your marketing, and you're going to have people that are coming in no longer from referrals anymore. So it's not going to be your cousin's wife, or it's not going to be somebody that you worked with, or, somebody that comes through as a referral that you're getting work from. It is going to be cold strangers on the internet. And this is where the real chink in the niching and the positioning armor starts to come about. So you will still have the same message. You will still say, I help people with online business, right? Only for cold people on the internet, it is going to be like you are invisible because you are not speaking directly to a particular person and solving their particular problem. And so what is going to happen is that you might be paying, for example, for the leads to come through the door, but they're not converting into sales, and you're wondering what is going wrong, and you're just not getting any traction with this new business model. And even when you do get people that are showing interest, there'll generally be these price objections. They'll say, I can't afford it, or I don't have time objections up the wazoo, honestly. And you'll be wondering, what is going on? How can these people not afford it? How do they not have the time? When actually those objections, a lot of the time, are just couching the fact, or when actually those objections, a lot of the time, are just hiding the fact that you haven't properly positioned and niched your offer, and therefore there isn't enough value in the eye of the person that is looking in and considering whether it's right for them. And this, usually a few years into having a business, is where the real importance of having a niche starts to come into play. It is something that you can get away with in the early days when you have these referrals coming in. You don't need a volume of leads. But as soon as you do, and as soon as you're growing up and putting your big business pants on, you cannot be speaking to everyone, because ultimately there are 2 reasons that somebody will even pay attention to you. They have a problem and they think that you are the right person to solve it. And so if you're going out and you're saying, hey, I help people to start a business, and they're like, actually, I'm a real estate agent. I just really need to double my appraisals. You're completely missing them. Now, a few years ago, and in internet years, I literally just mean like pre 2020, really, this concept of niching wasn't so mission critical. And that is simply because there were fewer players in the space. And when there are fewer players in this space, you have what is called a blue ocean. And a blue ocean is what it looks like on the box. It is a blue ocean with a few little, fishies swimming around, and it's not overcrowded, and it's a lovely little place to be. And so if you were doing business before 2020 on the internet, you pretty much stood out by virtue of the fact that you were there in the first place. The times have changed. We have moved from a nice little blue ocean into a red, bloody ocean in pretty much every category that you could possibly imagine on the internet. And so, in order to get that same sense of ease and flow that you might have been able to have in 2020, it is no longer a luxury to have a niche or to define the space that you're going to serve. It is essential to your business. Now, the other reason why having a niche is really important is because ultimately there's only three ways that you can stand out online. The first way that you can stand out is by being better. And yes, we all want to strive to be better. It is worthy, it is noble, and should be the driving force of your business. But it is very difficult to do that the broader you go. And also, it's difficult to do that when you're first starting out. You're coming in and you're competing with people that have been in business for 3 years or 5 years. And hopefully, they're still hungry and hopefully, they're still innovating and they're likely 3 or 5 years ahead of you. The other way that you can stand out is on price. So you can be cheaper, but then the next person can be cheaper and the next person can be cheaper. And then it's a huge race to the bottom. And so the third way that you can stand out on the internet is by being different. So imagine that you are swimming around in that little blue ocean and everyone has black scales on their little fishy fins and you have beautiful orange and white scales. You are going to stand out. And so that analogy is something that I would tell my 5-year-old son, but I do feel like it still holds weight here. You can either stand out by being better, by being cheaper, or being different, and we want to be the latter. The best way to be the latter is to own a specific and defined space on the internet. And that is ultimately all that niching is. So, with that out of the way, I want to go through the 3-step process that I recommend for people that are like, okay, I've heard this niche advice a million different times, but I've never properly implemented it. Or maybe you think you have an arbitrary niche and you're kind of not sure whether it's actually serving any purpose at all. I'm going to show you the 3-step process that I recommend to really reverse engineer into the type of niche that if you mentioned it to a friend in passing, they do like a double take and be like, what? What did you say? I need to hear more. So, step number 1 is to choose a market to serve. Now, ultimately, you want to choose a market that is going to be a profitable one. And the big 3 titans on the internet, this is taken from Russell Brunson's Expert Secrets, is wealth, health, and relationships. I don't think we need anyone to really tell us that these are 3 big whoppers when it comes to thinking about, okay, well, where do people have the big problems that they want to get solved? Health, wealth, or relationships? So you want to choose to angle your message with what it is that you want to do into one of these 3 different things. Now, you might think, I kind of do something, but I'm not really sure whether it fits into any of those buckets. Or technically, it could fit into all of those buckets. So, am I kind of getting a little bit muddled up right from the get go? This is a really common question. I want to cover it. So, what you actually want to do when it comes to a niche is to choose the way that you want to angle your niche. Theoretically, you could angle anything to come under any of those 3 buckets, right? And I'm going to give you an example. But you want to choose one and that becomes your focus. So let me use an example being knitting. Let's say that you have a course where you want to help people to learn how to knit. Now you might think, how is that health or wealth or relationships? Now let's think of 3 different ways that we could angle the concept and transformation of learning how to knit under one of those particular pillars. So for example, health. We all spend a lot of time on our mobile phones, right? So, what if we had something that was occupying our hands and we weren't constantly reaching for our phone? What impact would that potentially have on our mental health, on our anxiety, on all of the things that are coming about by the fact that we're distracted in today's world? So, we could angle the concept of knitting to be something that is ultimately a form of self care. It is something that is stopping the distraction and the anxiety that comes with constantly being on social media and giving us an old school way to enjoy a hobby. So, see how we can angle knitting under that pillar of health. Now let's try and angle knitting under the pillar of wealth. Well, this is a pretty simple one. We could help people to learn the skill of knitting so that they could open a market stall on weekends, or so that they could start a side income as a mum, or so that they could start to create their own clothing and they don't need to go and buy it from the shops, right? Now let's angle knitting under health, wealth. Where are we up to? Relationships. Okay, so we could be starting a weekly knitting club to start to build social connections between a subset of people. So, people that are coming to a particular area, maybe they haven't made, friendships or connections. It could be an online knitting circle, or it could be an in person one where you catch up every Tuesday and it becomes a thing that you do to start to foster relationships together. So, see how I've taken that one transformation, which is knitting, but I've actually chosen or I've given options for three different angles that you could take for that. Now, could knitting sit under all of those? Of course it could. But the point with niching is that you're not going to choose all of those things. You are going to choose just one. And that is going to make you different. It is going to make you stand out and it is going to set you apart. So that is step one, but we don't want to stop there. Now, step number two is a pretty quick one to cover. It is just going one layer deeper. So, with our knitting example, we've kind of already done that. We've gone health and knitting, okay? Relationships and knitting, or wealth and knitting, right? And it's almost like these two layers of niching kind of come up with or percolated, you percolate on them at the same time. And so, for example, let's say, for example, you want to help people to start an online business. So, your next layer down would be wealth and then online business, right? So, what we're doing here is just literally going one layer deeper. Now, I think that most people know when it comes to niching that you do want to at least get to this point. So, like I said, I'm not going to spend too long here. Only that step number one is to choose that core market. And step number two is to go one layer deeper within that core market. But, and this is a big but, not just to leave it there, because this step three is going to make all the difference. So, what is step three? So, step number three is that you're going to go one layer deeper again. And this is actually where all of the magic is and where you have the biggest potential to stand out. Now, here is how we are going to niche in this layer three. We are not going to niche by market yet. In the next episode of this particular series, I'm going to show you how to position your niche to a particular market, like mums or, some other niche, right? But we're not going to do it at this particular point. And I think this is the mistake that keeps a lot of people stuck or not quite positioning and niching with impact. So instead of choosing a market, which we're going to do as the next step, and I'll walk through that in the next episode, what we're doing here is going one layer deeper with a focus on, drumroll please, the vehicle. Now, what do I mean by the vehicle? Well, whenever you put together an offer, you are essentially taking someone from where they currently are, they're in problem land, all the way through to solving that problem, which is solution land. So you're taking them from problem to promise. So the vehicle is the way that you do that. It is like the car that is driving along and taking them from problem land all the way through to promised land. That is the vehicle. So let's say, for example, that you have people that have a problem, which is they want to lose some weight. And then the outcome of that is that they have lost the weight, right? And so the vehicle that you're taking them along is going to be how you're going about doing that. So, for example, it might be by counting macros, or it might be through a Pilates based workout, right? So, it is the how, but it cannot sound as vanilla as that. So, when we are going to the third layer, what we want to do, and the way that you're really going to have a niche that just makes people turn their head and think that is so cool, is to have a way of delivering or taking people along or driving from problem land to promised land that is unique and different and that stands out when you say it. So, for example, let's say that we had chosen wealth and online business as our two layers, right? Let's say that we were going to go one layer deeper. Now, I could say that that one layer deeper is business coaching. Now, that feels like the most vanilla thing in the entire world. So, what you actually want to do is come up with a framework or a methodology that is unique to you, that is taking the vehicle that everyone else is delivering a particular result in and making it yours. Once it is yours, it is your intellectual property. No one else can take it away from you. And you want to do it in a way that people haven't really heard about before. So, let's say, for example, that I said, okay, I'm a business coach. No one's going to turn their head at that. Let's say that I said that I install AI driven one person businesses. Now, that is going to make people stand up and pay attention. You are utilizing AI to help people, coach people in business, but you are doing it with the outcome of an AI driven one person business. It doesn't require any team, it doesn't require as much overhead. And it is going to make people think, oh, that's interesting. That is something that I haven't heard about before. So that is where you want to get to when you get to your third layer. You want to have your vehicle, but you want to have it articulated in a way that you are sharing a framework or a methodology that has a different way of doing things to everyone else that is teaching the same old, boring, and bland content. So, another example, let's say that you're in health and then maybe it is fitness and then it's personal training. Now, that is another niche where it's a dime a dozen. And just going three layers deep and saying personal training is a niche, but it is not going to be the type of niche that is going to help you stand out and sell. It is just going to put you into a red ocean. Let's say instead that you said my category is health, my subcategory is fitness, and you develop 20-minute fitness habits to live 10 years longer without high intensity cardio. That rolled off the top of my tongue, but that is an example of what I mean. So it's like, wow, you're not just doing personal training. Yes, that is the vehicle, but what you're actually doing is helping people to live longer with these 20-minute fitness habits. So see the difference, see how one is like really talk aboutable and it really has that kind of buzz baked right into it. And the other one is just the same as everyone else does. Now, another example using the personal trainer, you might instead of saying, okay, well, I'm going to be health, you might say, I'm going to be relationships. And you might say that you help to spark new connections without dating apps with a Saturday morning run club, for example. So see how you're taking that bland niche of personal training and you're actually making it something that stands out. You're angling it to a core market and it is something that feels like a really unique and defined niche that people are going to be attracted to as a result. So that is how you do it. Number one, you choose a core market, health, wealth, or relationships. Number two, you go one layer deeper. And then number three, you niche by vehicle, but making sure that it is a unique framework or methodology for delivering a result that is different to everything else that is out there. Now, the way that I've walked through it makes it think like you do step one and then you do step two and then you do step three. But actually, I want you to think about this as ingredients that you kind of like mix together to see how they all come out rather than a set recipe. Because, for example, with the personal trainer example that I gave, I was kind of looking at it and I was like, okay, well, I could go back up the totem pole and I could change this to relationships and I could see how that would influence the vehicle and the end result. Now, this stuff is simple, but it's not easy. It requires creativity. And so I don't want you to think, oh gosh, what am I going to do here? Because it does require you to kind of sit down and brainstorm with a piece of paper and think about all of the different options that are available and spend some time on it and percolate on it. It's never something that comes up in the course of 20 minutes or an hour. It's usually something that you think about for a while and it might come up, a week, a month later, and it's like, yes, I've got it. But once you actually have this, it makes such a big difference and such a big impact on everything downline of it. So, all of your marketing, all of your sales funnels, all of the things that you then apply that niche to, all become easier and all become lighter. And that is what I want for you. The bottom line is that if you're trying to speak to everyone, you are ultimately speaking to no one. So, like I said, this is part 2 in my personal brand series. I want more of us to have these beautiful business models and to absolutely smash it with them. And I saw a real need for this like personal brand series of lessons just to get us back on the right track. So make sure you go and check out the episode before this one, if you haven't already, where I talk about how to actually set up your personal brand with a project based mentality rather than just thinking that you need to strap on golden niche handcuffs forever. And then in the next 2 editions in this series, I'm going to be diving deeper into what you do after you set your niche. So, after you set your niche, the next step is to position it to a particular market, but doing it in a very unique way. And then you want to define a talk aboutable edge. And so that is going to be the next 2 episodes in this series. And we'll be capping off with an episode on how to actually do all of this stuff without wanting to crawl into a little hole forever and die, because I understand with a personal brand based business and you needing to be visible, it can feel a little bit like that sometimes. So make sure you subscribe if you want all of the episodes in this series. Please let me know if this one was helpful. I hope it was. And I will see you in the next episode. And come and subscribe on my Substack. If you want the written version of these as well, you can get those over there. All right, guys, until the next episode, I'll see you then.